If you ever want to be an entrepreneur, if there's one thing you're getting from Chris and I right now, go figure out how to sell. Because there is no skill that you will use more. And I'll hear, well, about leadership. Guess what? If you can't sell, you ain't going to be a leader because you ain't going to recruit anybody to work for you. I'm excited about today's interview. I have somebody who's exited 2 companies in the last 18 months for 9 figures. Yeah, that's 9 figures. Probably a lot more than you're doing, maybe even more than you're thinking. He's the founder of Solgen Power, Pure Light Power. He's the founder of the Founder Podcast. I have Chris Lee with me here today. Chris, it's great to have you on the podcast.
Great to be here. Appreciate it.
All right. So, it's a hard lift to exit anything, above 7 figures. Heck, I'd say it's, for a lot of people, it's hard to exit a 7-figure.
Yeah, it's hard. I think it's just hard to exit a business in general.
Exactly. I was going to say, so you've married 2 beauty queens, according to this bio I just gave you. So what do you think? I'm going to get into why you were an entrepreneur and all that. But when I introduce anybody who's exited, because it is hard to exit. It's hard. Now, I will say some businesses have high valuations right now, and I think it's going to come to bite some buyers in the rear ends. But I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole right now. So, what do you think the secret was to your 2 exits? The type of business you had, or was it There's a lot of reasons why people want to buy a company. What do you think the strength was? And because you sold it pretty good money, and 2 of them, within 18 months.
Yeah, I mean, I think 2 things. One is building an extraordinary culture. Right, for us, culture was everything. It was by design from the very beginning. We were building this thing to be able to sell as well. Just good, clean business, clean books, clean operations, and then an incredible sales force, right? And so building a sales force that was unique, that had unique marketing strategies that really couldn't be replicated. And so those were probably the 2 most important things in building something for exit.
Yeah, I think what you said was the key, and I've used that phrase before in one of my books. You start a business knowing you're going to sell it, even if you never think you're going to sell it. But you start it from day one, doing the right paperwork, having the right books, clean books, showing the money trail, showing assets, showing sales. I mean, somebody should be able to look at what you've got in a fairly fast amount of time and know whether it's real or fake.
Yeah, exactly. And so, and there's so much that goes into that, right? Holding, having regular audits, having, good, clean SOPs that are documented, that you can be like, hey, this is exactly how the company functions, and to your point, you don't necessarily have to sell. Just doing that is good business that allows you to eventually sell.
Yeah, I've said if you did 2 things when you started a business, you'd build a better business. Number one is you build it to sell. That means you're going to have clean operations, paper trail on everything. Second is build it like you would franchise it. That'll force you to put systems in place so that it can operate beyond your control. In other words, so it makes it selling it easy because it's designed, it's got systems in place, it's got training in place, and it's so much easier to transfer that business to a new owner.
Absolutely.
So what do you do when you exit 2 businesses for 9 figures? You're a pretty young guy. What's next?
Yeah, that's a great question. I went through a little bit of identity crisis at the beginning, because it's like, hey, this is what I've always wanted to do. I've always wanted to spend more time with my family. I have 5 kids, right? Me and my wife, and so, but you can only spend so much time with your kids, right? The void of 50,
thank you for
60,
saying that
hours.
Because I apologize, because I have to say that. Listen, my kids adore the ground I walk on, but not 24 hours of me.
Yeah. And yeah, so, I mean, you got 60, 70 hours that you got to fill this void with. And so you go to all the baseball games, you go to all the everything, and you're just like, wow, I still have 40 to 50 hours and I don't know what to do with myself. And so One of the things I decided to get into was podcasting because I really love networking with incredible people, telling stories. And so I launched the Founder Podcast. It's catapulted to a top 50 business podcast in just 2.5 months. So I really enjoyed that. And really the next thing for me is I realized I want to grind. I want to continue to do things, but I want to build it around a lifestyle that allows me to be at all the sports games, allows me to be at all the kids' activities. And so really the next thing for me is I'm investing and consulting in businesses and helping guys that are stuck in that 7-8 figure mark catapult to that 9-10 figure type exit.
Yeah, no, I mean, when you've done it, obviously, I always say, if you want to learn how to do something, find somebody who already did it. I can't make it any more simple. If that is the roadmap. Yeah. I mean, the one thing I'd throw out there to you, obviously as somebody's raised children and we did a good job with that. And I always say I never missed anything. The only thing I ever missed was a piano recital, and I did it on purpose, Bailey. On purpose. Had nothing to do with business. I want to be clear about that. Everything else I attended is partnering. Partnering in business has been the secret that I have found, keeping my sanity. I always say I'd rather have 50% of a lot than 100% of a little. I'd rather have 50% of something I didn't have to work 100 hours a week for. It's that one sweet spot of when, especially with the knowledge you have, and you have, there's only a few things you need to start a business. You need capital. Okay. And you need a good idea. You're probably got those two covered. So the thing that's missing is time, getting somebody to go alongside you, because you don't even have to give a great piece of the pie probably to get a partner, because I don't have to anymore. I can put the capital. I have the capital. I have the infrastructure. I need bodies.
Right.
I need sharp people to run with me.
Yep. You bring up a great point. Both my businesses were built with partners. Because I knew that I could run faster with incredible people than I could alone. And I've never met a billionaire that did it completely on his own. And so, one of the things that we did in building our businesses was motivate people with equity. Now, we didn't give away the whole pie, right? It was just slivers of the pie. And, somebody will bleed for two things: one, culture; two, a slice of the pie, no matter how small it is. And, and that's the thing that I found in my businesses, and really what we're using to go and scale additional organizations.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. So when did you know you were an entrepreneur? Obviously we know that now. We got 2 exits. We've established that. But when did you know, right, okay, man, I can't work for anybody?
I started selling Cutco when I was 18 years old, and had my first job when I was 9, delivering newspapers and selling newspaper subscriptions and stuff. But when I was 18, I sold Cutco, and I realized, man, I really like creating value with just my intelligence. Right. Like this isn't just a trade hours for thing. But at that point I was planning on being a doctor. And while I was going to school, going to get my bachelor's in science, I started knocking doors and doing door-to-door sales. And, when I figured out that I could make 6 figures, different. I could make 6 figures in a 3.5 month period. I realized, this is fun. I like creating things. And so I dropped out of college at the age of 24 to start my very first business, because I thought I knew everything it took to go and build a business, and found out very quickly I didn't. And within 2 years, I tried scaling really big, lost everything, had filed Chapter 7 bankruptcy, lost investors' money, all kinds of stuff. And I was humbled really quick that, man, I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to build things, but I really don't know how. And so, I spent the next few years building a few little things and not really scaling them. But then I eventually went back to work for somebody else with the intent to be paid for education. And so I went and worked in a sales job for somebody that was scaling really big businesses. And I just went there to study them while being able to have a little bit of entrepreneurial spirit in the sales world. And so, I've really, really known since then that I want to go and build anything. So when I eventually went and launched this business, it was very on purpose, very like this. I knew strategically exactly what we were going to do. We were going to bootstrap this thing. We were going to take on debt. We weren't going to take on investors. I was going to attract really good talent for low salary and a piece of the upside, and just create culture by design. And so, I mean, that's kind of the whole story that eventually led to where we're at today.
Yeah, no, there's, if you can get a team, that's the secret to anything, because it creates momentum. I always say there's, in sports and in business, your greatest friend is momentum in sports and in business. Your greatest enemy in sports, if you've ever played baseball, you know what it's like to have momentum go against you. And when it does, you can't stop it. If you've been in business, you know the same thing. It's funny you talk about Cutco knives. I joke about this, but I actually sold Cutcos too. Actually, out of the Northeast region, it was Vector Marketing at the time, and I'd set the record for the most $1,000 weeks in the history of the company. My entire grad school, I sold $1,000 a week, and then when I was done, I was done. And the way I did it is I hit the 50% really fast, like in like 6 weeks. And then I hired high school kids to sell under me. And this is the funny thing about it, is one of those actually was a prosecutor in a federal prosecutor. I was in church a few months ago, and everybody had masks on, right? So you can't tell anybody. I turn around, just to kind of do the high thing, they do it in different. And this person reaches over and gives me a hug and whispers in my ear, "It's Grayson." That's a name that you don't forget. Grayson's kind of, not. And I'm like, that was one of the guys who sold knives for me.
That's awesome.
And I took him and his wife to dinner last Thursday night, and we were talking about Cutco knives. That's kind of like where he's like, man, he goes, man, you just had us so on. We were so fired up, man. You said you had your whole group of us selling those knives. And I'm like, because once I hit 50%, I never sold another knife. That's where I learned partnering. I'm like, okay, wait, I give them 25%. I make 25% to do nothing but write up the orders. On Monday, I'd write up the orders at my house, bring them to the meeting, and they, Sean hit 1,600 again this week. He sold blah, blah, blah. He sold the all the different sets they had. The galley. There you go. The galley was like the $395. I still remember, this is 30 years from now. That's 30 years later. And I took him to dinner last Thursday night. So it's just awesome. A funny story, because I still have Cutco knives upstairs. That you will learn how to sell, though. That's a fact. You do two things: sell Cutco knives or go sell Bibles. I always say either one of them will teach you. They're like,
cool. Yeah.
Go, because I used to have roommates, that would go sell Bibles, and they would just drop them off in like Ishbuck, Tennessee, with like 6 boxes, and we'll pick you up in 8 weeks.
Yeah, nothing will get you prepared for life more than that.
Yeah, man. If you ever want to be an entrepreneur, if there's one thing you're getting from Chris and I right now, go figure out how to sell. Because there is no skill that you will use more. And I'll hear, about leadership. Guess what? If you can't sell, you ain't going to be a leader, because you ain't going to recruit anybody to work for you. So what do you see as kind of like your next, business thing?
So I'm very much a strategist, and I can identify, issues and potential within businesses. And so really the next step for me is partnering with businesses that are at a plateau, that have been around for a while, haven't experienced a lot of growth. Maybe they're just been steady, and coming in and giving them a new fresh of eyes, how to market and sell and scale and attract good talent. So that's the next step. I have a business called Arrows Financial, in which we come in and we partner with businesses, and I bring in my management team that's worked with me over at SoulGen and whatnot, and we consult and we help scale.
Yeah, and people need to do that. I always say insanity is doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result. Very often you're missing something, and the reason why that is because you're not growing. And to continue that. And there are times when you got to give up. Again, I said, I'd rather have 50% of something growing than 100% of something dying.
Absolutely.
So, there you go. So Chris, how can my audience, how can they connect with you? And if they have a business that's maybe not doing what they would like it to do, but, take it to the next level?
Yeah, so I'm on all social media platforms at Chris Lee QB, like quarterback. That's my handle on Instagram and everything. And then of course my podcast, the Founder Podcast. It's on all major channels, Apple or whatnot. But yeah, so we one of the things that we've been focusing on, we've been hosting masterminds of business owners. This is really just to create deal flow, get people in the door, and be able to help identify issues. And so, yeah, we hold different events, we hold different masterminds. If anybody would like to come and attend one, that's really the best place to really interact with me.
All righty, Chris, thank you.